In a world obsessed with self-improvement, where every bookstore shelf is crammed with advice on how to find one's true self, Friedrich Nietzsche presents an alternative view. The self is not something to be found, it is something to be created. This concept, radical and disorienting in Nietzsche's time, continues to challenge the way we think about identity, purpose, and fulfillment today. But what does it mean to create yourself in Nietzsche's philosophy? Why is it that, in his view, finding ourselves requires less reflection on who we inherently are and more focus on who we want to become? To answer these questions, we need to dive deeper into Nietzsche's philosophy, where he moves beyond traditional self-help models to a vision of life as an artistic process, a continuous act of self-creation. Let's journey into the core of Nietzsche's ideas, peeling back the layers of what it means to find, or more accurately, to create oneself. Modern culture often implies that our true self is like a treasure hidden deep within us, waiting to be unearthed. We are encouraged to dig into our past, our emotions, our subconscious desires, or even our astrological signs to discover who we really are. This notion might feel comforting, but for Nietzsche, it is a distraction from what life is really about. He rejects the idea that a core, unchangeable self exists to be uncovered like some forgotten artifact. Instead, he suggests that life is about becoming, not being. Nietzsche's famous proclamation that God is dead can be seen as a precursor to this line of thought. If the universe lacks a divine blueprint, then humans too are not created with a fixed eternal essence. This opens the door for unprecedented freedom, but also a daunting responsibility. Without a God or predefined essence to guide us, we must create our own meaning. And with that comes the realization that the self is not discovered, but made. This is where Nietzsche's philosophy diverges from mainstream thought. For him, the self is not a stagnant identity to be realized. It is a work in progress, an ever-changing creation. Just as an artist molds and sculpts a masterpiece, we are called to do the same with ourselves. A pivotal aspect of this self-creation involves identifying and understanding our values, not the values imposed on us by society or culture, but the ones we truly resonate with. How do we know if what we desire is authentically ours or shaped by the world around us? Nietzsche's answer is both simple and profound. Reflect on what you have loved. In his work, Ecce Homo, Nietzsche suggests that instead of blindly following societal standards of success, we should look at the things, people, and ideas we have genuinely cherished. The things that make us feel most alive offer clues to our deepest values, the foundation upon which we can begin to build ourselves. But the challenge lies in differentiating between values that are authentically ours and those we've adopted out of conformity or fear. Nietzsche urges us to question, have I been honoring values because they are mine, or because they have been handed to me by others? This line of questioning leads to a critical aspect of Nietzsche's philosophy, the rejection of herd mentality. In a world dominated by societal expectations, peer pressure, and cultural norms, finding and owning our values requires immense courage. It means being willing to stand apart from the crowd and resist the urge to blend in. Nietzsche speaks to this in his critique of slave morality, a morality imposed by society to subdue and control, which often values meekness, obedience, and mediocrity. In contrast, he champions what he calls master morality, a system that values strength, independence, and creativity. For Nietzsche, to find oneself is to shed the imposed values of the herd and cultivate one's own personal ideals. Nietzsche's vision of the self is fundamentally creative. Life, in his view, is an artistic endeavor. Every choice, action, and thought we undertake shapes us, as a sculptor shapes a block of marble. The authentic self isn't hiding beneath layers of inauthenticity, waiting to be revealed. Instead, the authentic self is forged through our conscious decisions and creative acts. In his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduces the idea of the Übermensch, often translated as the overman or superman. This concept represents an individual who has transcended the limitations of conventional morality and societal expectations to create a life according to their own values. The Übermensch is the embodiment of self-creation, living life as an artist would, with a sense of purpose, passion, and power. For Nietzsche, this is the ultimate goal, not to find one's true self, but to create it through deliberate action. He views life as a canvas and every moment as an opportunity to paint something new. Our identity is a dynamic, evolving masterpiece, not a static portrait. While Nietzsche's concept of self-creation might sound idealistic, it is grounded in a realistic understanding of human nature. He acknowledges that we are not perfect, nor should we strive to be. In fact, part of creating ourselves involves embracing our flaws and weaknesses and transforming them into something valuable. Nietzsche proposes the idea that we can style our character by acknowledging and incorporating both our strengths and shortcomings. Just as a skilled artist can turn imperfections into elements that enhance the beauty of a work, so too can we embrace our limitations as part of our unique identity. Rather than viewing our flaws as obstacles to overcome, Nietzsche encourages us to see them as essential to our self-development. Through this lens, even suffering and hardship are not merely to be endured, but are opportunities for growth and transformation. Nietzsche's concept of Amor Fati, the love of one's fate, reflects this idea. It's not enough to simply accept our circumstances. We must embrace them fully and creatively incorporate them into the narrative of our lives. This is a radical departure from the modern fixation on perfectionism. Nietzsche does not call for a flawless self, but for an authentic one that is vibrant, complex, and evolving. Through this process of artistic self-development, we learn to turn even our darkest moments into something meaningful. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is the call to live authentically. He contrasts this with living according to societal ethics, which often prioritizes conformity and mediocrity. Nietzsche believes that true fulfillment comes not from meeting external expectations, but from living up to our own aesthetic. This emphasis on aesthetics might seem unusual in a philosophical context, but for Nietzsche, life is art, and art is life. We should strive not to be good in the conventional sense, but to be beautiful in the way that a well-crafted piece of art is beautiful, full of depth, meaning, and originality. This means rejecting societal norms that do not resonate with our personal vision and creating a version of ourselves that is empowered, independent, and authentic. Nietzsche often uses the metaphor of life as a journey, one that each person must undertake alone. No one can walk your path for you. No one can create yourself on your behalf. This is a deeply personal process, one that requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to confront the unknown. In his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche writes, "No one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you, must cross the river of life." This metaphor captures the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy. The journey of self-creation is an individual one. While we may be influenced by others, we must ultimately take responsibility for forging our own path. The idea of personal responsibility is central to Nietzsche's philosophy. In a world devoid of inherent meaning, it falls upon us to create our own meaning. We are not passive recipients of a preordained destiny. We are active participants in the creation of our lives. Nietzsche calls us to embrace this responsibility with enthusiasm and to view life as an adventure of self-creation. Nietzsche's concept of self-creation is intricately tied to other key ideas in his philosophy, including the Übermensch, Amor Fati, and the duality between the Apollonian and Dionysian. The Übermensch, as mentioned earlier, represents the ideal of someone who has transcended conventional morality to create their own values and meaning. Amor Fati, or the love of fate, is the acceptance of life's challenges and hardships as necessary parts of the creative process. Meanwhile, the Apollonian and Dionysian duality, drawn from Greek mythology, represents the balance between order and chaos, reason and emotion, structure and spontaneity. For Nietzsche, living authentically means embracing both sides of this duality, allowing ourselves to be both disciplined and wild, rational and passionate. It is through this balance that we can create a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling. Nietzsche's philosophy of self-creation is not for the faint of heart. It requires us to take responsibility for our lives, to embrace both our strengths and weaknesses, and to view every moment as an opportunity for artistic expression. However, for those willing to take on this challenge, Nietzsche offers a vision of life that is rich, dynamic, and full of possibility. To find yourself, according to Nietzsche, is not to discover some hidden essence, but to create a self that is authentic, empowered, and uniquely yours. Life, in his view, is not a problem to be solved, but a canvas to be painted, and the most beautiful masterpiece you can create is your own life.